Welcome back to This is Dunder Moose. What am I doing here? Here we go. Okay. Just gonna chill for a bit. It's been a little hot on Twitter lately. People are disappointed at the naked state of my upper lip. There's been some arguments about what belongs in D&D, and all kinds of people arguing about Dungeons and Dragons, as people do on Twitter. And that's the place to do that, right? It's like you gotta take a dump in the bathroom. If you go in the bathroom and someone's stinking it up, it's not their fault. That's the place to go to do that, right? But still, it can get a little bit how you want to say, it can get a little caustic. Sometimes you just need to relax. Sometimes you just need to read a book or paint a mini. So I went to my friendly local gaming store and I picked out some minis to paint because I don't know about you guys, but that is a surefire way for me to just chill out and relax and kind of let go of some of the stressful and contentious things that have been going on. So, and we don't just argue about D&D, you know, here at This is Dunder Moose. Sometimes we like to just say bygones and say, there's many ways to have fun. I've got some clerics here to paint. I don't know if that's focusing too well on those. It's probably my crappiest camera. And, also I've got there were some, I got some bedrolls. I wanted a tent, but the store didn't have a mini of a tent. And I'm like, well, of course you got a tent. Everyone just knows to bring a tent. How come the tent isn't here by default? And they were just like, sometimes it's hard to get supply. So I got some bedrolls. Let me go backwards here. I got some primed bedrolls. This is what you're gonna have to sleep in if you didn't buy a tent to bring along. So yeah, not sure how that's gonna go. But let's go ahead and get cracking on that. I also want to make sure that my stream is actually streaming, because I'm doing it a little different and I'm doing it a way we don't normally do it. And it's weird not being able to see any of your comments. So, and there might not be any comments because there might not be any people. Let's just jump in there and see. Here we go. A little different, and I'm gonna mute that. Yep, no chat. What was I thinking? Anywho. Let's go ahead and break into the bedrolls. I feel like they're going to be a little bit quicker and easier to paint first. I like how they're pre-primed, because that means I don't have to waste time priming. And I'm also not the greatest at this painting stuff, so we'll see how this goes. I'm not sure how these... Oh. There we are. So I've got my, I don't know if you guys can see, I got this on Amazon. This is a rack for nail polish, but it works for paints as well. And because I don't have many skills, and because I watch YouTube, I've got some speed paints from the Army Painter. So this isn't full-on slap chop. This is if this was full-on slap chop, I would like spray painted these all a dark color and then done a zenithal highlight. I don't know if that's gonna zoom in our focus for you there. There's my bedroll. It looks like they are browns and kind of off-white colors. So let's start off with just this regular non-pillow one. I got a little bit of blue tack here, and here's a little life hack for you. The what is it called? The painter handles. I just use these little candles. Back in pandemic, I was working from home and I was down here in the man cave, and I would just burn these candles for a little ambiance. I've got some fireside glow, but then you know, it runs out of wax and it's no good anymore. But check this out. You can hold. It's a big, you know, it'll fit in your hand if you got big, you know, man paws, and you can use your fingers to rotate the lid. So a little bit of blue tack on that, put your mini on there, and you are off to the races, and you didn't have to buy some, you know, expensive, professional, what you're supposed to use paint handle. So I'm just going to wad some tack on there, and then I'm going to slap on my bed. And let's do this one with... Let's see what colors we got. Pallid Bone and Sand Golem. Any other of those kind of cream colors? A malignant green. Do we want a gross green bed for them to sleep in? I don't even know if I'm going to even use this. I mean, do you need to bust out the minis for camping? I've got this diorama set up, and let's just put our minis around the campfire, and we can all tell each other stories. But I need to know where you're sitting before I tell my story. Sorry, guys. I'm a little bit in the theater of the mind camp, so that's how it goes. But if you have any questions or comments or corrections, feel free to post them in the chat, and I'll try to get to them as they show up. There's a little bit of a delay, so don't be upset if I don't get to your thing right away. And I hope I remember what I was talking about when I catch up. My brushes are all crap, but we're going to use them anywho. And so let's start off with let's let the darker shade be the actual palette that they're sleeping on, and then we'll make the blanket a little bit of a lighter tone. Try not to shake this into the microphone. I don't want to too much ASMR. So I'm gonna be starting off with a Sand Golem for the base, and I'm just gonna put a few wee drops of that. I should really clean this palette off so I can see what I'm doing. Put a few drops of that right in there. I probably didn't shake it near long enough, but I do feel like, let me just wet the brush. I feel like it's kind of a low risk on painting a bedroll. That I'm probably not going to mess up. Okay, now I'm going to find out how hard it is for these YouTubers that do this stuff on the regular. How do you make sure your camera's in focus, make sure you're painting well, and not screw everything up or just paint the whole thing off camera? We shall see. It will probably stink, but you know what? That is not the first time one of my videos will be less than stellar on this channel. One of the secrets, and this is a secret to life, by the way, one of the secrets to This Is Dunder Moose is you find intelligent, well-informed, wildly entertaining people, and then you invite them on your show, and then you get... It's kind of like the opposite of guilt by association. Everybody thinks that you are interesting and exciting and have good taste and opinions, when really you're just there to ask questions of the people that do. So I do want to talk about the show. You know, as you can see, there's no guest today. And usually I only do about one of these a week. Sometimes I do more, but I have a ton of stuff in the works. And I don't know if I should be talking about it right up front, because some of it may fall through, but I'm just going to go ahead and share with you these are some of the dream guests I've had for a while, and people that I want to talk to on the show. And we are in talks. It doesn't mean it's going to happen. It might fall through. But as you know, we are fascinated on this channel with certain aspects of the Bro SR, one-to-one time in particular in campaigns, and this idea of player-run patrons, where you give your powerful NPCs, where you give your powerful NPCs to player characters instead of the DM having to run all of them. And then you allow their creativity to mold the game in a way that it might not have otherwise. And the other part of that is the Bronstein, which is, we've done a few shows that have that. And the Bronstein has met with mixed success. It has a reputation for just driving the players wild. They're all crazy about it and they have fun. And it just eats DMs. It just devours them, and it leaves them second-guessing themselves and feeling like they've done something wrong. I'm going to switch from the Sand Golem to the Pallid Bone for the top blanket here on this bedroll. It's looking a little bit, I don't know what it looks like on your screen. It looks a little bit like a burrito here. So, gosh, it would sure be nice if there were a tent to cover these things up, so you didn't have to look at how awful they are. But tents cannot be assumed. Tents must be specifically planned for when you go. Like, I should have called the friendly local gaming store first and said, hey, do you guys have minis of tents that I could paint on stream? Because if you just assume that there will be tents, I mean, and why wouldn't you? You know, like, I'm not stupid. I want to paint a tent. I mean, I didn't pay for a tent yet, and I didn't, factor in on the extra weight in my paper bag that a tent would take up. But I do find it a little bit, it broke my enjoyment of my shopping trip by not having that there. And a lot of times those things that just show up in the real world that you wish that you didn't have to think about, they can wreck the whole game and make it not worth playing, and you just go home and play Helldivers instead, right? Because Helldivers keeps track of my ammo for me. What am I talking about? I was talking about shopping. I don't know why I'm thinking about that for some reason. This color does not have as good a coverage, but I think that's okay. I do like how these speed paints just kind of bunch up in the low parts and are picking out some of the detail. And this is, I don't know if you can see, this is kind of a ratty blanket. And I don't know if I picked the right colors. This is like almost looking dirty, like some kind of burial shroud or something. I don't know that I would sleep in this bed. You know what? Maybe I would. If I was out on the campaign trail and I was tired and the ground was hard and rocky and I had gone miles and I needed a good rest, maybe this thing would be just the thing. Especially if I didn't have like shelter of some sort. I do feel like I might be laying it on a bit thick though. So I don't know if you guys can see, like, it's really pooling up there and I don't want it to get blotchy. So I'm just gonna, I dipped some of it off on my paper towel and I'm just gonna kind of screw it up a little bit. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm putting bubbles on it. You do not want bubbles in your sleeping bag. That's the mistake the Cowboys made, and nobody would sleep next to them. Man, this is okay. I think that's a good start to the bedroll situation. I did miss a little spot in there. I don't know if you guys can see that. There's like a light spot on the under palette that should be a little bit darker. So these speed paints are a little bit more watered down than normal. So you've got a little bit of grace with them as far as they don't quite dry off as quick as other types of acrylic, but I don't know what's in them. Like other acrylic, you can get into the habit of mouth shaping the tip of your bristles. Like use your lips. And with speed paints, I don't know if that's the best call. So I'm gonna. Of course, I've still got the bottom half to do. Hey, here we go. I'm sorry, I've totally missed the chat for a bit now. Only certain aspects. I had a shield. How can they hit me? Thunder, 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 goose. Hey, Sarbombadil. Hey, Vince. Hey, Authoritative News Network. This is why Moose has the best content. He says one thing, but he means two things. Why, Vince? I'm not sure exactly what you mean. I feel like the bedroll is just not good TV. So let me get out one of my others. I've got some human clerics here, as you can see, and one of them is more of like the shield and mace cleric, and the other one looks like he's like casting some sort of healing spell, perhaps greater restoration. I don't know if some members of the party were injured or affected in some way that they needed healing, but he's right there to make sure everybody gets back up and running. That might have been an unfortunate turn of phrase. Oh, look at there. So this will be tricky because they can come out of the chairs. So, oh goodness. That's probably good so that I can get a good paint on the chair. These are some artifact level weapons. I'm not sure why there are clear bases with these. Like, if you look, the base of the model, I mean, there's only a little bit of an overhang, and I don't know. I'm not sure if I need the base. Anywho, what do you think? What do you think, chat? Should we do the Should we do the cleric first, or shall we do her combat accessory? Let me catch up with the chat. I've taken notes from Outdoor Boy YouTube, and now use prestidigitation to warm my water skin to put the hot water bottle in my sleeping bag while I doff my armor. Wow, I never thought of doing all that. I feel like I should do the chair first. Sorry, lady. We're gonna sit you over here. Don't go anywhere. What am I thinking? Why would I say something like that? All right. So here we go. If you've been caught up in some of the drama on Twitter as regards to the presence of such is it a vehicle? Such an implement in your game. I gotta say, I'm for them. I think they're pretty sweet. I was watching some other streams where they were, talking about the benefits that they give, and I gotta say, it's like a little, it's like a chariot with no creatures to pull it. It'd be even awesomer if like you had two dire rats or like giant weasels pulling it. Like if it was a giant weasel war chariot, that would be Kino. But I gotta say, like, you ever go into Meijer or Walmart or a grocery store and you see those little amigos, and there's like 3 or 4 of them and no one's using them, and you're like, well, I don't really need that, but I am kind of tired and my back's worn out, and you're just tempted. I wonder, with all the benefits that these things accrue through the rules, I wonder if it's frowned on. Like, I bet a tiefling would do it. Anyway, let's do some color theory here. I feel like the headlights should be like a yellowy glow. The armrest blankets. I don't know if you guys can see on my crappy camera. Maybe this one's better. Nope. There's like it's almost got like a quilted or a button tufted look on the arms. So I'm thinking like a brown, like a leather, almost like a reddish leather. I've got hardened leather, but I don't feel like that's regal enough. I wonder if I mixed slaughter red with hardened leather, if that would just look awful. So that's what I'm gonna do. You won't be able to tell because my palette is so marked up. We won't know what this looks like till it's on there. Now let me catch up with the chat here. Authoritative news network loves that the chair gives the rider half cover. Vince says, last night had my PC and dubs run with 2 broken legs going to battle with goblins in the back of a cart. And Sarbombadil, I don't know what else you call them. I think they look like headlights. Unless like they're like little bucklers or something. I would maybe guess that it's a lantern if you don't have a spell of continuous light that you can put on them. Probably ruins surprise, you know, if you're like wheeling through the dungeon trying to sneak up in the dark and Sar says, turn off your brights, man. We're gonna be spotted. True. It's a real hazard. But I feel like the vehicle definitely makes up for that lack of surprise. Like they may see it coming, but there's still not much they can do. All right, so I got 1 part hardened leather to 3 parts, whatever the slaughter red. Let's see how this looks on the armrests of this here combat implement. I don't know if you guys can see that. This camera is crap. If we ever start making money on this channel, I should invest in some better gear, I think. So far it's been a net negative on the cash flow front, but that's all right because I get to hang out with you good people and get bullied about my facial hair situation. All right, what do you think? Is it too brown? Is it too red? Does it not really matter? Because I'm probably not going to get to use this piece. I will say this. Like, talking about the likelihood of, people using these versus just having a magic spell undo the damage that makes it necessary. If I were DMing an open table, like at a game, like at a store or at a conference or something like that. Are they called? They're not called conferences. What are they called? Convention. Thank you. If I were DMing and somebody legit came in a wheelchair and they were like, can my player be in a wheelchair too? You'd have to be a pretty stone-hearted son of a gun to say, no, that's not a thing, right? I don't know. I feel like I want to hear from people that play D&D and use wheelchairs, how they feel about it. Because, there's, I saw a YouTube video of a girl with an American Girl doll. It's just a cute little girl. And she had a prosthetic leg. And her parents bought her an American Girl doll that had a prosthetic leg. And you should have seen her face when she opened it. Like, that meant the world to her. So, I'm just going to say, I tend to be the kind of DM that if my players have cool ideas or even off the wall ideas, I tend to say yes to see what happens as opposed to saying no, this wouldn't work. Wouldn't force it on them. Let me catch up on the chat. Vince says, get yourself a wet palette, bro. Well, these are speed paints. I don't know how they do with a wet palette. I think they might thin even more. But yes, if I was working with my normal... So here'll be a blast from the past. Here's Tentacle Pink from Games Workshop. Lich Purple. Do I still have... You know, I've got original Scorpion green. I don't know if this stuff even works anymore, if it's just like all one big solid. The original Dark Angels green. I thought I had a bolt gun. Yeah, here it is. Bolt gun metal. I don't know how rare that is nowadays. But anyway, I got some OG acrylic paints, and yeah, wet palette would definitely work much better. These guys tend to stay wet a little bit longer. I'm gonna keep doing this red brownish thing for the leathery, just for the quilted bits. I don't know. Sound off in the chat. How do you guys feel about the combat wheelchair? And if you had players that, well, I guess it makes a difference too. If it's players that you know versus like people that you don't know, how would you handle that? If someone you didn't know was excited to play with you, and you were the DM, and they were like interested in the combat wheelchair rules. And as far as I understand, there's multiple versions of the rules, right? Like, I think the YouTube video I was watching, he had the combat wheelchair version 3 rules. So there might be like whole version wars over just that one element. So let me know in the chat which one's your favorite, or if you would just drop a nope on all of it and say, no, you got to heal yourself with magic like everybody else. And what if you had a combat wheelchair and you cast minor illusion on it to make it look like legs that were walking? Would that be acceptable, or would that be a no-no? I guess that's one of the main problems I have with this kind of stuff, where like the whole concept of having to be careful for people's feelings. I don't want to give anyone a bad experience. And I don't want to make anyone feel, left out or put upon. And I feel like things like this open the door a crack for offense that might not come otherwise, All right, so no, Vince, I did not prime it. According to the packaging... Oh, crap. Okay, this one does not say. I will say the other one was from the same company, and it did... I could have sworn it said pre-primed. Maybe I ripped that part off. Maybe I'm making it up in my head. I don't know. So... No, I'm not. I'm not. It's not primed. I'm not doing well, apparently. And it's also drying out, despite what I said about these kind of paints. So let me see if I can get it in here on this last little surface before I move on. That is one thing I noticed about these speed paints, though, is like you have to be a little more precise with them, because like see how painting the back of it kind of bled onto the seat a bit. If I wanted to make that seat a different color, the overbleed is going to show through. All right, let's see. Authoritative News Network says combat wheelchairs in a mudcore game just becomes abuse at some point, as you throw a nation's worth of handicapable people into the meat grinder. I'm not sure what you're... Oh, you stand corrected about the wet palette? No, that's still good advice. It's still good advice. This is not a pro painting channel. Bros at the table goofing around, sure. Actual paraplegic at the table, and then he gives me a nervous face. Yeah. I don't know. I guess I would defer to them and like apologize if I hurt their feelings. I feel like if it's your friends and people you're playing with, like they already know, the things that when you put your foot in your mouth, they know that you're not being hurtful. You just might be ignorant, right? And if you can just say, "Hey, man, I said that thoughtlessly, and I was not intending to make light of your situation or make it worse." A lot of times, bros will cover that stuff in grace, right? a lot of times, even if it does bug them a little, they'll just let it pass just so it's not a thing and you can get back to the game or whatever. So I don't know if this controversy has made it less comfortable for them as well. If they were kind of like, I wish this wasn't part of the dialogue right now because it doesn't make me feel good, and I definitely have opinions on it, but I'd rather just move on. For example, I'm not comfortable with the R word because my only son was born with Down syndrome. So I know that there are people that use it in the technical sense and are not trying to disparage, but ever since that happened, there's just a little bit of a clench when I hear it, but I don't make a thing out of it. I don't get offended. I'm not looking for an opportunity to. I feel like there are people that are just waiting for something offensive to happen so they can be in the right and let people have it with both barrels. But I think there's a lot of people that overlook a lot of slights because the friendship is more important or having fun at the game and they just want to move past it, So it's a thorny issue. And on the other hand, it's also just fun. It's just legit fun to argue about stuff on Twitter. So I have certainly overcommitted to positions just because of the hilarity of it, like absolute no prep and desert swamp and that kind of stuff. Anyway, what color should the seat be of this combat wheelchair? Would it be the same material as the padding, or because it looks like it kind of flops over? There's like a shield between the legs, and then it just kind of goes right into those. I'm sure the feet should be some kind of metal, and the rims of the wheels, maybe a tire around the outside of some sort, and then the back that's got rivets, so that would be like iron. Maybe. What do you guys think? I think maybe brass would look good with the dark red. So maybe this is where I should have the wet palette, because I might want to switch to something with a little better coverage. I don't know if there's good metallics. Let's see, shining gold, perhaps not. Let me grab. I've got some more down here. All right, what do you think, guys? I've got Runelord Brass. I've got Lead Belcher, and I've got Retributor Armor. What color do you think for the metal bits? The metal bits of the wheelchair. Let me catch up with the chat. Man, this is hard because I'm so focused on what I'm doing here, and you guys are all the way on the other side here. Sorry says, I think if you're asking for a wheelchair-bound PC, you're probably not the kind of person I'd invite to my game to begin with. You are bringing the awkward. Vince says, what color is Naugahyde? Naugahyde or Nagahide? And I see Chuck. I'm sorry, man. I missed your message. I see you retracted it. Sorry, I wasn't trying to ignore you. Czar Bombadil says some kind of weird beige. Okay, well, yeah, we've been doing the weird beige on the bedroll. Oh man, that sand golem is a little bit redder than I would have liked. But anywho, what's a good beige for the seat? We got pallid bone. We've got a malignant green. This is kind of a greenish beige. I don't know if it'll be more green when it. We could do zealot yellow. I don't have the best color theory, if I'm being honest. Like a flesh? Kislev flesh? Oh, Chuck said typo. Correcting it. Gotcha. No rush, Chuck. No rush. It's only 7:30. I can't even believe that. Feels like this is going a lot slower than my usual stuff. If I had red, I'd want like a gold or a brass kind of. Let's do the Rune Lord brass for the metal parts and see if the seat presents itself after we do that. So I've got these crazy. I do prefer the droppers. These crazy. I feel like these crazy GW pots are just made to cause problems. But Rune Lord brass we are, and let's definitely do all the riveted bits in that. You guys ever have that thing where you like focusing really hard, you're just looking really sharp at something, and then your eyeballs just like wiggle back and forth for no reason? It's almost like an eyeball sneeze or something. Sometimes I get that when I'm painting minis. Oh, I wasn't even doing that on camera. Nothing but professional work here on the This Is Dunder Moose painting. Watch out, Ninjon. You got some competition, Jazza. You got a blurry, out of focus camera and a doofus painting stuff that's not even in the center of the picture. You know, this whole YouTube journey, sometimes you need to do stuff to learn that you're not good at it. You know? The secret in life is figuring out when that happens. In my earlier, younger days, I went to a college that had a theater program. Oh crap, did I say that out loud? Black Lodge Games are going to get so excited to hear that. And I did a lot of student theater, like theater directed plays, one act plays that we did in the dorms, you know, just for funsies. It wasn't part of the main stage productions or anything like that. And if you wanted to be in the theater department, you could choose a theater major if you wanted to, just like kids could be a math major or, you know, education or microbiology or whatever. You could pick theater, but if you wanted to be a performance major, you had to audition for all of the performance professors. It was one of my favorite things to do is walk through there. This is going to make me sound weird, but like, you know that feeling before you get on a roller coaster? Just like the excitement and the thrill of going up the hill. Like not just like the violence of going down the hill and looping around, but like the anticipation and dread that builds on the way up. Like if you trick yourself into enjoying that, then you'll look for it in other places. And I got that same kind of rush walking. I would purposefully walk home through the theater department on my way home from my other classes on that day because I could just feel the tension and the nerves, and it was just weird. It was like I was like a stress vampire. Yeah, I don't know if anybody's. I'm probably super weird for that. I don't know if anyone else is like that. But long story short, it was a big deal, and people were worried because it would change their major. Like, if you couldn't make it that semester, if you didn't get picked, you could still be in the theater department, but you were going to be doing like, you know, props and lighting and set. You know, like you were going to be crew. You weren't going to be an actor. And there were people that it was their senior year, and they had like every semester they had applied for it, they had auditioned, they'd picked out their part, they'd acted it out, and it was a no. It was a no for them. And that's like 4 times a year, every year for 3 or 4 years, but they just did not let go of the dream. You're like, what are you talking about, Dunder Moose? What are you going on about? But it's all connected. I'm coming back to my main point is sometimes you're just not good at something, and you got to try it and figure that out, and then be like, oh, okay, that's not my thing. And like one of the tricks to being a human is to have your radar up and see when maybe the thing that you wanted to be your thing, maybe you were not being completely honest with yourself about your abilities in that thing. And man, it's hard, just being in the BroSR and like advocating for a different way to play Dungeons and Dragons and like skating along all of the cognitive dissonance that causes in people. It's hard enough to hear the truth from somebody else. It's easy to believe, we have cognitive dissonance, which makes us unlikely to accept things that disagree with our preconceived notions. And we also have confirmation bias, which makes us, pump our fist and say, yeah, that's right, when we see something that tends to agree with our preconceived notions. Here's where my preconceived notion of not needing a wet palette is hindering me because my paint is getting thick and blobby. This is not the recommended too thin coats. But that's all right. All that to say, it's brutal to be fooled by somebody else, but it is nowhere near as difficult to overcome as being fooled by yourself. So how do you get a reality check when you are the one who's been fooling you? And I'm interested in your guys' answer to that, because that's the real trick. It takes some real humility. Let me catch up on the chat. Nagahide, not Naga. So we're not talking about a giant snake monster. Chuck says, I think that in a world where healing magic is in budget for adventurers, it makes no sense to also have disabled adventurers or general rich people, right? I think that might be it. I think it might be... Well, so did you guys ever read the Stephen King series called The Gunslinger? Is that what it was called? Was it called Gunslinger? I think the first one was called The Gunslinger. It was like alternate. It was like a science fantasy, post-apocalyptic. It was everything all at once. I loved it when it came out. I kind of wish I'd stopped reading after the first 3 books, because it took him forever to write the 4th one, and then it just wasn't that great for me, if I'm being honest. It didn't hit in the same way. But I can't remember if it was the 5th or the 6th. It was towards the end of the series. There's a character. I don't want to do any spoilers, because you guys may enjoy it even though I didn't. But there is a character who, like, one of the defining things about the character their whole life is that they have their legs were cut off by a subway. And she even at one point has her legs restored to her in the point of the story, and then somehow loses them again. And then she meets a kid who has an amazing power in that he's kind of like Simon in the old 1980s, I think it was on Nickelodeon. Well, my name is Simon and things I draw come true. It was like a cartoon, but this kid could do that. He could draw stuff with a pencil and it would take on reality. He had like powers of creation. And she knew that about him. And so she had him draw her a portal to get out, because she knew that, the pathway they were on. I'm sorry, man. Spoiler warning. Definitely mute me if you're still reading the Stephen King series on The Gunslinger. And I will honk my nose when it's safe for you to unmute. But yeah, long story short, she's got a cold sore at this point in the book. And she gives the kid an eraser. And he draws her and he erases the cold sore, and her cold sore goes away. Which is like, okay, that's pretty cool. And then she has him draw a portal that she can use to get to an alternate version of New York, where she can be happy with alternate versions of the people she's traveling with, who are like civilians and not on a death quest, and whom she dearly loves, by the way. And the kid draws her a portal, and I'm doing it again. Um, and then she's like, "Okay, thanks," and she steps through wheels herself through the portal, and that's how Stephen King wrote her out of the series. And it was just so weird to me that she would have the kid, um, you know, that she would have him heal her cold sore, which was probably going to heal on its own in just a couple days. She has this magical kid heal her cold sore, but do nothing about her leglessness. And I think that's kind of what the combat wheelchair feels like in a high magic game, is like, why are you keeping it? Is it a status thing? Is it, I guess what it comes down to is it's a disconnect between what the player wants, who may be longing for a feeling of representation, and what the game world provides, which is a maybe a not as realistic, easy out solution for what's in the real world is a big problem. And you could argue that's the appeal of it, right? Like the reason the game is cool is because stuff that is insurmountable in our world, if you're brave enough and you can go down in the dungeon and you can wrest the treasures out, then you can overcome it. And maybe having this be a thing in there fights that. It's a decision that makes the player happy and not make sense for the character, right? So, I'm sure that there are probably people with more profound and better thoughts on this topic than me. I'm sure there's people that have a much more cultured and nuanced appreciation of it. I'm an external processor, guys. I saying things out loud is part of how I think about them. So please don't take anything I say out loud as my final answer on the topic, because, man, how on earth am I supposed to get past my cognitive dissonance and confirmation bias unless I throw my opinions out there and get corrected by someone who can tell I'm being a doofus, right? How do I check myself? So let me have it if I need it. Speaking of which, let me catch up with the chat. Vince is still trying to convince me Naugahyde, like what couches are made of. Chuck says, that's what I was saying. Hufo says, oh no. Oh man. I'm so behind on the chat. I don't know what the oh no was about. Chuck says, blasted character limit for comments. Also wanted to ask if there was a second how-to bro SR video in the works. All the best from England. Chuck, I know that I need to do that. I was like, in January, I was like, how to have a bro SR campaign this year, and then I haven't done a follow-up. I am working on it. I do want to follow up. The problem is I haven't even taken my own advice yet. I'm still reading through the Dungeon Master's Guide. And if you watched my episode with Dornall, he said that was a non-Euclidean book, and he's right. It's hard to get through, but I also scheduled my first AD&D first edition session Saturday, April 6th. My face-to-face group, it's people from work I invited, it's people from church I invited, so like that puts a line in the sand. It's like, all right, you need to be ready on this date. So I have been reading Appendix N books. I have been reading the Dungeon Master's Guide. I have been trying to lift weights. I'm not doing it as much as I thought I was in January. I don't know if that's relatable or hypocritical. I've been trying to follow my own advice, is what I'm saying. And now I'm thinking about what are the problems that I'm encountering? What things do I need to be ready for on that Saturday? And so that's what my next video is going to be about. Like, what are the first things once you get the ball rolling? The first one was kind of just like a more mindset. It was less how-to and more of like a what-to and how to approach it. So thank you for asking me that, Mr. Chuck Sneed. I'm glad to have you along from England. And hopefully I can scratch that itch for you pretty soon. The other thing I'm trying to do is just have people that actually have done it and know come on my show and share the real deal with it instead of watching Dunder Moose blunder through. Let's see. Hufos Acre says, yeah, I know what you mean. I've had the same before performances. Oh, that nervousness. Yep. It paints the mustache on its face. It paints the mustache on its face or it gets the hose. Yes, the Dark Tower. That's right. Dark Tower, The Gunslinger is the first book in the Dark Tower series. You have forgotten the face of your father. Vince McMaximus is man enough to admit he spends all day lounging by the pool of my own confirmation bias. And Authoritative News Network says Monkey's Paw erases her legs completely. Is that what happened? Did the kid erase her legs? I know she got like phantom legs when she was pregnant with a demon baby, which yeah. Thanks Stephen King for that. Zara Bombadil says, in simplest terms, you won't have wheelchair PCs for the same reason you don't have wheelchair longbowmen at Agincourt or any battle. It defies reason. Yeah, so you've got to, because I mean there are certainly Bro SR campaigns that defy reason, right? Like you don't have Muppets at Agincourt either, although it's hilarious if you did. So I don't know. I kind of feel like it's a tempest in a teapot. It's a non-issue. I don't know how many of these minis they've sold. Maybe they've sold a lot. Maybe there is a lot of demand out there, and I'm just playing with the wrong players. The other aspect that makes it thorny is if you have players that aren't disabled and they want to play a character in a wheelchair, then you got to wonder about why, right? Like, are they... Oops, I'm doing it again, y'all. I like to rest my elbows on my torso so that my hands feel like they have a little more... You see how I got like my heel up against my thumb? I'm just trying to keep the moving parts all touching each other so they all move together. Getting the rims of these wheels, the front edge of those rims with this ratty old brush. But yeah, it's like, it's one thing where if a person who legitimately, you know, like they're an amputee or something and they need that to get around, and they're like, you know what, I think it's interesting, the challenges that I face. How would I have tried to, if I had the same condition in this setting? I think that's a fascinating problem. And maybe, here's the other thing about disabilities that people aren't aware of. Not all of them are permanent, you know? Like, in my professional life, I create e-learning. You guys think, oh, well, you're the devil. You make those horrible trainings that I have to click through. I do try to like add some video game elements to mine to make them a little more fun and engaging and memorable. But that's beside the point. What I'm trying to say here is like it's a big deal to design for accessibility when you're creating those, because you don't know who's going to have to take that training and you don't want to make it harder for them. You know, so... But one of the things I point out when I'm teaching people how to create e-learning is that, like, closed captions make sense not just for people who are hard of hearing, but also for people who may be working around noisy equipment or in a loud cafeteria when they're getting their training done. You know, things like that. So, and maybe, you know, designing something for people that don't use mice is for someone who had carpal tunnel surgery, and they're going to be able to use mice again soon, but for right now they need to have a keyboard navigation, right? So maybe their concept for the character is that they spend a little bit of time in the combat wheelchair before, you know, getting enough money for that spell or finding the scroll or whatever. Like that could be the goal, is I need to get something that gets me out of this chair, and the chair is a temporary thing, right? So just something to think about. Let me catch up on the chat. Chuck says, recombat wheelchairs, even people who do use them, they're kind of using them wrong. You have a vehicle, just mount ballista or cannons on it. Right on, man. Macho Mandolph plays a character in Trilopulus named Snake, who he has a proficiency in ballista. He's got a ox cart that he carries that has a ballista on the back. He's got a tarp over it. It's crazy. Sar says, fair enough. You're your own portable siege engine if you have a combat wheelchair. Sacrifice mobility for kaboom. Less mobility equals more DACA. More DACA equals more killy. More killy equals more wah. More wah equals profit or something. I don't know. I like where this is headed, guys. I like where this is headed. Although, to be fair, in a world with weird intelligent species, a Muppet isn't unreasonable. That's right, Sar. Muppets are highly reasonable, and the fact that we haven't seen them for real in our world just shows us that we are very close to the base level of the simulation. I expect the levels, we've created video games that now we're putting AI into, and they're gonna at some point, someone's going to think Muppets are real, is all I'm saying. Hufo says, the issue is that people are wanting to self-insert and play out elements of their identity or trauma like therapy instead of playing out aspirational adventures. It's a self-affirming pity party. And Hufo says, the cheers aren't the problem, it's the why. So I do think that brings up an interesting question about the point of the games. Is how important is the headcanon of your players versus the shared reality of the world, right? Like I know simulationists, like I don't want to commit Mr. McCrease to a position on the combat wheelchairs, but as far as like if he's DMing a Tolkien-esque campaign, and the idea is someone, I think his example was someone came in as Elrond Hubbard of the Church of Saurontology, right? And he was like, no, that breaks it. Everyone's trying to be serious, and like for him, the tone and theme of the campaign outweighed the agency of a player with a goofy idea, right? And I wonder if this wheelchair thing we're on about is connected in some way to that. Let's see if I can catch up here. I blame the elves for our lack of Muppets. Get those stinking knife-eared jerks. Time for Elgcool. I'm sorry, Chuck. I'm going to need you to explain that one. I don't get that. Elgcool? Elgcool? Authoritative News Network. It's like what Brain Leakage was saying in the difference between Western and Eastern isekais. Oh, I didn't catch that. I bet that was good. Brain Leakage is one of those guys that drops my jaw on the regular. So, and I did download Forgotten Ruin. I'm taking a trip soon, and I'm going to be listening to that on audiobook about the Rangers that go into a D&D world. So, yeah, I'm fascinated with that stuff. So if anybody's read that thread or whatever, or Authoritative News Network, if you want to pop in the chat what you mean by that, about the difference between Western and Eastern ones. But you know what? I think we've done enough on the chair. I'm going to let that dry for a bit, and we're going to go back to the bedrolls. And maybe that's a good time to switch topics back to the tent topic. Do you guys know what the other controversy on Twitter was this week with I think it was Alexander Lex Williams, which I need to be nicer to that guy. He hit me just the wrong way when I was in the middle of an audit, and I mean there's memes were created about how cranky I was that day. So I'm sorry, Lex. I'm sure that if we hung out in person, we'd have a good time together. But at the one point, I was disrespectful, and I referred to him as Grognard GPT because I felt like I would post a sentence and then I would get like 4 screens of reply every time. And then he came out and said that he hasn't played D&D in 50 years, which I think that means he's never played because it just turned 50. Unless he's referring to like he stopped playing when first edition came out. I don't know. Anyway, he made a comment. Who was he going back and forth with? Was it? I want to say it was the Basic Expert, maybe, or Crossface, one of those guys. About how like if you're in an overland adventure and it's cold out and your players didn't specifically tell you that they brought a tent. Well, of course they brought a tent. They're not stupid, right? So kind of hand wave that portion of the players' time to prep. And I'm interested on what you guys have to say Let's see. Elgkul is a word from Warhammer Fantasy that specifically means elf, genocide, and dwarven. Wow, Chuck, that's a deep cut. I'm going to need to go back and read up on that. And Hufo says it was Rube. Now that makes sense. I gotta get Rube back on this show. That guy's always good for a laugh. And he thinks hard about games and stuff too. I don't want to just say he's funny. Tom or Sir Bombadil says nope. If it's not on the sheet, you don't have it. Encumbrance. Yeah, that's the other thing. Is like, not just encumbrance, but treasure, like gold. Like how much does a tent cost? Do you just get a free one can you conjure it out of the air? Maybe if you had a spell that was like conjure campsite or something. But I'm with you guys on that one. I think that's a lot of people don't like encumbrance and the little fiddly bits that make you have to spreadsheet, but like I feel like my audience anyway here on this channel, like you guys are here for that, right? Because as John McGowan pointed out, encumbrance leads to domain play. Encumbrance leads to building castles and cathedrals and things like that, right? Ufos agrees it was Rube as well as others. So anyway, again, I'm not trying to be disrespectful to Lex Williams, because I mean, that day that I was all cranky, I got into it with him and one other dude, and he did not block me, and the other guy did. So, so props to Lex for not blocking me, even though I was definitely not. I was succumbing to my base nature on Twitter, which I should eschew. I should get away from doing that, because I don't like when people do that to me. By the same token, like, if you're legit wrong about something, I should be able to strongly counter it without it being taken as being mean for no reason, you know? I feel like that's another big, important part of the Bro SR, is like that whole challenging each other and not feeling like the friendship is over if you disagree. You know, like we can... It's like a big D&D episode of Helldivers, and like you can take some friendly fire, and you can all laugh about it when the person's reload pod killed you from orbit. But there's also that principle we talk about of iron sharpening iron, that biblical idea that you don't really know something until you have to defend it, and it's not a true friend that will let you go unchallenged. One of the best friends I have is one of the dads that I play face to face with, and years ago I had gotten addicted to a video game called Destiny 2, and it was to the point where like I was so committed to finishing the raid and not letting my team down that I would not, like my wife would call downstairs, hey, it's time for dinner, and I'd be like, be right there, and then an hour later I still hadn't finished the raid. Right? And so it was hurting my family, and it was hurting my marriage. And I had a buddy take me out to coffee and say, here's what's going on. You're wrecking your marriage, you're wrecking your family, and you need to stop it. And like, I hated that message. I didn't want to acknowledge it. I didn't want to believe it was true. But that was the most loving thing he could do for me. And that was the act of a true friend, to step over the hurdle of awkwardness or resistance or whatever, and just tell somebody something they absolutely need to hear. Now, is the rules of Dungeons and Dragons on that level? No, it is definitely not. This is just a game. This is a fun game. This is a game people get invested in and put their identity in. But it is, if you can get over that, it is still valuable to have people that can tell you, hey, you're doing something suboptimally, there's a better way. And you can disagree with them, and you both are forced to reevaluate your positions and why you feel what you do. And I think that's the only way that I can really overcome my own self-delusion, is if I'm forced to defend it and I can't, right? Was Don donning again? He might have been. I don't know. See, my problem is I have a soft spot in my heart for pot stirrers, and it's like I can't get mad when someone does it to me when I enjoy it, when other people get to do that. So, Authoritative News Network says, couldn't find the thread, but it was about wish fulfillment power fantasy versus strong man doing what's right. Oh, yeah. like, who's the hero of the isekai? Is it someone who is challenged and has to go through a try-fail cycle to become the person who can win? Or is it someone who's always meant to be the king and really just needs to believe in themselves? All the power already resides within them. And if they just stop believing all the haters, then they can claim their throne and rise. Is that what you're talking about? Authoritative News Network says, sounds like a good friend. Yeah, one of the best. And I mean, he'd gone through his own stuff with addictions earlier, and so I knew that it was coming from a place of someone who had also been broken and had to pick up the pieces and stuff. And he gave me some just amazingly good advice. You know, first of all, I had to stop playing the game, obviously, and he said, you know, you need to fill it with something else. And so he recommended Bible reading and prayer. And he was like, see if you can pray solidly for 45 minutes. And I was like, what? 45? I don't think I can have my eyes closed for 45 minutes without getting so crazy and irritated. And I couldn't do it at first, but I did. Over that time, I built up to where I could just solid pray for 45 minutes. I don't know if I could do that now. I need to get back on that. But yeah, it made the difference right when it needed to. And Mrs. Moose and I are happy right now, and the kids are good and well adjusted. And so happy ending on that one. But it took a lot of humility, and it took a willingness to hear something that I didn't want to. Well, I think that's it, guys. I got my palette painted. I'm well on the way with my combat wheelchair. I hope you guys had fun. I don't know if I'm going to get an episode out next week or not. I'm going to be on the road for a little bit, so we'll have to see. But anyways, I'm glad that we had this time together. Thanks for being here with me on This Is Dunder Moose. And oh yeah, I forgot to tease you with who we got coming. So again, I don't know if this is going to happen or not, but hey, let me just get back on my face. I have been in talks. You know, I'm crazy about these Bronsteins, right? I've been in talks with Vomitron, who was like my second ever guest on the show. He just had in the Make America Great Again campaign, they just had a battle Bronstein, so I'm going to get him and his boys on to share that, do an after action battle report. Harmony Ginger has run a battle Bronstein, and I'm in talks with her as well on getting her and her crew on to tell us about what happened with that and what they did. And like, I'm really fascinated in that one, because I don't know if they were playing any of these BroSR principles before 1-to-1 time and not. So I want to hear from her players on like, how has that been as she's tried to implement it. And who else? Oh, Nebrolionics. I don't know if they're going to say yes or not, but I've been already kind of putting an idea. And these guys are playing actual like Kriegspiel war games. So I'm going to have those guys on if I can. I got a great idea. Oh shoot, my brain just let go of the person that gave it to me. Bosman Boss or Bozeman Bose said, hey, how come all you do is have the good patrons on? How about you get the flubs, the ones that got frustrated and messed it up and got taken out of their game? So I'm trying to put together a support group for frustrated patrons. And also World of Worth. Steven just finished off a campaign with his Tuesday guys in Sojenka. Shoyenka. So I'm going to have those guys come on too. So I got a lot of cool stuff coming up. Also, Archer's Friend. I reached out to him. He's a guy that's been I think of Archer's Friend and I think of Authoritative News Network. You guys were like some of the first names I remember ever logging on and being in the chat while I was doing this and stuff. And so Archer's has been using the principles of the BroSR as he games. And so I want to have him on as well. So I got some cool stuff in the pipeline. It's coming. But I'm going to let you guys go for now. Thanks for being with Dunder Moose. And we'll see how long it takes the mustache, if I get the spousal veto on the mustache or not. You know what? There are some conditions, some terms and conditions on the mustache. And I hope you're listening to this, R-Dubs. If Jeffro Johnson publishes the book he's been working on and we get the full how to win at D&D or how to win at role-playing games or whatever it's going to be called, where you can win, if that comes out, I will grow back the mustache for sure. there may be some other conditions. I think Mr. Wargaming was a little generous when he said, "Hey, let's get him to 500 subs." That feels like a long way down the road. But I guess if that happens, he threw that out there. If I get to 500 subs, I guess I'll grow the mustache back. Other than that, it ain't looking good, guys. Just being honest. Sorry, I got to deal with the boo-boo lip. Anyway, have a good one, and we'll see you next time.